Hi and welcome back. In this video, we'll be turning our project, which used an in-memory database, into one using files for storage. What we've got here is our database, which is a list. So the first thing to do is to start transitioning our database.py file from using this list to store things into using a file. This is the reason why I've structured the code the way that I've structured it for you. Now, if we want to add a book, we already know how to add a new line to a database, or if we don't, we're going to learn in this video. We already know how to read a file and get all its contents. We already know how to save into a file. We already know how to read a file and delete something and then save it again. So this database.py here is what's called an interface in programming. An interface between our business logic, what our program is supposed to do, and the storage, which in this case will be a database, a file. And we're going to move on to database soon. So if we wanted to add a book, that would be very straightforward. All we have to do is, well, first of all, before we actually start writing any code, is change this to a CSV file and decide on the format of the CSV file, which I think should be name, author, read, like so. Now that that's clear, we have decided that we're going to store name, then author, then read, separated by commas. We can continue. Notice that it could be beneficial to separate it by hashes instead, because the titles may have commas in them, but for now we're not going to worry about that. You can make that change later on if you want. So to add a book, all we have to do is say with open books.txt in read mode as file, and here, write mode as file, and here what we're going to do is add a new book at the end. I'm just going to delete this thing here. However, I mentioned earlier on when we started looking at files that write mode would erase all contents of the file, and then you would be able to start writing from the very top of the file. We don't want to do this because our add book should add a new book probably at the end of the file. We do want to keep the other books that are already in the file, otherwise we'll only ever be able to have one book at a time. Instead of W mode, we can use A mode, which stands for append. So anything we write will automatically go to the very end of the file. Because our file is going to have this structure, and then it's going to have a \n at the end, anything we write is always going to be at the very bottom of the file. Here's why. We're going to add a book, and that's going to be in this format: name, author, read, new line. Then we'll add another one, and because there's a new line, it will go on the next line. Then when we add another one, it'll go on the next line, and so forth. So it's important that we include that new line there, because append mode will just go to the very end of the file, the very last character, which will be the new line. So all we have to do is file.write, name, author, and then we have to decide on how we're going to store false values. Because the text file that we're going to be using is not a Python file, maybe false doesn't make much sense. Although it could, it's up to you. But I'm going to store it as 0. 0 for false, 1 for true. It's up to you what you do. And this is how we would add a new book to books.txt. Notice though, we still got our books variable up here. We don't need that, so I'm going to rename it into books file, and this is going to be books.txt, and this is going to be books file. That way, we're storing the file name up here. That's essentially our database. To get all books is going to be slightly more challenging. Once again, I'm going to go here and have a couple of lines of name, author, read, just so it's a bit clearer what we're doing. And the first thing we want to do is, of course, open the file. You know how to do this. With open books file in read mode as file. And now we want to get all the lines. But we want to get the lines without the white space. I hope you remember how to do this exactly using the strip method. We're going to say lines is line.strip for line in file.readlines. That's going to read all the lines, including the \ns, and it's going to give us each one in a list, in an element of the list, and for each of the elements, we're going to strip the white space, which is going to remove this here. So now we're going to have this as our contents of this list here. Now, we can also chain to it a split so that we will get one list of lists. Indeed, now our list will have this format. Like so. So we'll have one list, and inside it we'll have sublists, where each one is going to be a list of name, author, read. Now what we're going to do is we're going to construct our book dictionaries. So this is going to be another list comprehension. In the list, and notice by the way you can put list comprehensions in multiple lines, it's totally cool, totally fine. Line 0, author is going to be line 1, and read is going to be line 2.